the world are on treatment and living healthy lives. The AIDS response defines the path to success, a path of multilateralism. Key elements of this success are, first, shared responsibility and global solidarity. No single country or entity can ever solve global problems. Second, ensuring that the benefits of scientific innovation are shared by all countries. Third, putting human rights at the heart of all plans, ensuring that the vulnerable, marginalized people are reached first, and that there is no stigma and discrimination, fighting that. Fourth, sharing financial resources. Today, we face the challenge that the most vulnerable countries to HIV/AIDS with the highest burden are being choked by debt. The issue of restructuring debt is critical today. Resources should be shared. Lastly, the example of the HIV response, the coming together of countries, should inspire us to reaffirm our commitment to multilateralism. We have done it before. In 25 years, we fought this disease.
I thank the distinguished representative of the Joint UN Program on HIV/AIDS, and I give the floor to the distinguished representative of the International Committee of the Red Cross.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, yesterday, leaders of the world adopted the Pact for the Future. The ICRC is with you when you say in that pact that fellow human beings are enduring terrible suffering. We are also with you when you warn us of rising catastrophic and existential risks, many caused by the choices we make. However, you are also right when you say that there is a path to a brighter future for all of humanity. That your formula for this brighter future includes international cooperation based on respect for international law resonates loudly with the International Committee of the Red Cross. This year, we mark the 75th anniversary of the 1949 Geneva Conventions, which regulate how wars are to be fought. Every state in this General Assembly has committed to respect and to ensure respect for these rules both in word and in deed. We are with you in Pact Action number 14. We will protect all civilians in armed conflict. International humanitarian law requires that fighting parties only attack military targets, take all precautions to minimize harm to civilians, and then actually do so. We encourage all states here today to use their influence to speak to warring parties directly to make sure that this happens. Last year, hundreds of thousands of civilians were killed or suffered appalling injuries, many as victims of deliberate or indiscriminate attacks. We can and must do better. We're also with you in Action number 15. We will ensure people affected by humanitarian emergencies receive the support they need. The rules for humanitarian assistance are set out in IHL. Parties to armed conflict must allow and facilitate passage of humanitarian relief. However, we are faced with a compelling reality. Millions of people in war zones are left out of basic humanitarian support due to a lack of humanitarian presence. Destruction of basic infrastructure could be avoided if attacks were restrained and based on proportionality and distinction. The reality of today is that the compounding effects of destruction, disinvestment, and abandonment are leading to unbearable costs for generations to come. We can and must do better. The path to a brighter future for humanity is available to us. You have said In war, that path is lit by the Geneva Conventions. At the ICRC, we offer our hand to you along this path, and we ask, let's walk it together. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the distinguished representative of the International Committee of the Red Cross and give the floor to the League of Arab States.
الرئيس المستقبل يصنع اليوم
Thank you, Mr.
وكل قرار نتخذه أو مسار نسير
We are writing
فيه
the future
سينعكس
today.
على
Every
أجيالنا
decision that we adopt,
المستقبلية.
the path
وعلى
that
هذه
we're taking
القمة
will have an
أن
impact on
ترسل
future
رسالة
generations.
قوية
This
بأن أجيال
summit
المستقبل
must
تستحق بأن
must
تعيش
deliver a strong
عالما
message
خاليا من
that is
الصراع
future
ومن الجوع
generations
والفقر
deserve to live
المدقع
in a world
ومن
free of
تهديدات
conflict,
المناخ
from hunger,
المتطرف أو
absolute
التكنولوجيا
poverty,
المنفلتة.
and
من القضايا التي
extreme
نواجهها مرتبطة ومتشابكة
threats.
وكلها
These are
تتقاطع عند نقطة واحدة رئيسية هي صيانة التعددية والعمل المشترك على الصعيد الدولي. والقضايا الملحة مثل مواجهة ارتفاع درجات الحرارة والتغير المناخي والفجوة القائمة بين العالم النامي والدول الغنية خاصة فيما يتعلق بتمويل المناخ وتقاسم تبعات التكيف مع التغير المناخي على نحو عادل ومنصف والفقر المدقع وأزمات الديون والتحديات الخطيرة التي تفرضها التكنولوجيا الجديدة وبخاصة الذكاء الاصطناعي والتي لن يتسنى مواجهتها إلا بعمل متعدد الأطراف وتنظيم عالمي. برغم جسامة تلك التحديات إلا أنني ما زلت مقتنعا أن المهمة الرئيسية لهذه المنظمة هي صيانة الأمن والسلم الدوليين وأن بقية الأهداف سيصعب تحقيقها في عالم يسود الصراع والخوف. علينا أن نعترف بأن بؤر الصراع توسعت وجهود المعالجة والحل تعطلت وأن المنافسة بين القوى الكبرى ليست لصالح هذه المنظومة الأممية وهي تعرضنا إلى زمن فرضت عليها فيه حالة الجميع صار مقتنعا بأن مجلس الأمن بشكله الحالي لم يعد يعكس حقائق عالمنا اليوم ولم يعد يخدم أهداف العمل المتعدد
the world does not serve multilateralism in an effective way where action can be taken on conflicts. Another example, if you look at the conflict in Gaza, the aggression of Israel against Gaza has continued for many months. There have been massacres, killings, destruction, hunger, displacement, without the Security Council being able to adopt any resolutions. At last, a resolution was adopted, but unfortunately the Security Council could not implement it. Today it's the turn of Lebanon. The international community and the international organization must work to save the situation, otherwise to restore it, otherwise the conflict will expand and it will endanger peace and security. Thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of the League of Arab States. I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of the United Nations Human Settlements Program.
Excellencies, I'm honored to address you in this plenary of the Summit of the Future on behalf of UN Habitat and the new urban agenda that UN Habitat is mandated to lead. The new urban agenda is a shared vision of the United Nations for a better and more sustainable future. As we commence on planning for the implementation of the Pact for the Future, UN Habitat encourages the member states to recall that it is in our cities and towns where 2/3 of the people in the world are projected to live by 2050. This shift towards urbanization is driven by various factors, including economic opportunities, better access to services, and increasingly by involuntary displacement, disasters, and conflicts. Combined with the overall growth of the world's population, this could add another 500 million people to cities every 5 years. Against this projection, UN Habitat stands ready to support member states in the commitment of the Pact for the Future to ensure access for all to adequate, safe, and affordable housing, and support developing countries to plan and implement just, safe, healthy, accessible, resilient, and sustainable cities, as well as commitments in support of access to sustainable essential services in cities and the integration of disaster risk reduction into policies and programs. Well-planned urban infrastructure, housing, and services can transform the lives of people in cities towards more sustainable and resilient. Sustainable urban development is steered by inclusive, resourced local and regional authorities, and with participation of the young people in cities, will also provide the foundation for long-term stability, security, and peace building of societies by leaving no one and no place behind. In well-planned cities, climate and disaster risks can also be effectively managed, assisted by digital technologies. To achieve this, UN Habitat and the UN members of the Local 2030 Coalition encourage the member states to also seek for means to more closely engage with local and regional governments, as recommended by the Pact for the Future, to increase the opportunity to transition to sustainable development paths by 2030. Thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of UN Habitat and give the floor to the distinguished representative of the Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean.
Excelentísimo señor presidente de la Asamblea
Mr. President of the General Assembly, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen,
la Cumbre del Futuro nos ofrece una
the Summit
oportunidad
for the Future gives us a unique opportunity to show to the world that it is possible to restore trust in the multilateral system and demonstrate that international and regional cooperation can respond to the huge challenges that we confront and also serve to build a more peaceful, just, productive, inclusive, and sustainable future through collective action. The process that led us to the Pact for the Future and the Global Digital Compact and the Declaration for Future Generations has given us important lessons. Beyond the agreements, we reached the most important added value of these lessons is that it is essential to think about the future, and because topics that will be important for the future are already important. It's important for policies of countries to be fully aware of what kind of future they are building. Unfortunately, as societies, we tend to live in the short term. This is a trend that was aggravated by social gaps, and this replaces analytical thinking. Thinking of the future requires forums to examine this, to analyze it. The Pact for the Future is a major step in the right direction to restore a multilateral system that was designed over 60 years ago and which, as the Secretary General mentioned, requires urgent reforms, such as the international financial architecture, which is not commensurate to the challenges of development of today. Topics of peace, security, science, technology, innovation, and digital cooperation, youth and intergenerational solidarity, and gender equality are fundamental topics for the world and for Latin America and the Caribbean. With this in mind, one of the priorities of our organization is to contribute to strengthening anticipatory, proactive governance in countries of the region. We are creating parliamentary commissions for the future in our region in order to discuss not only what should be the solutions, but how to achieve them
es decir, técnicas operativas, políticas y
we're
perspectivas,
discussing
así como los espacios de diálogo
policies
social
as well as
para gestionar las
possibilities for social
transformaciones
dialogue to
indispensables.
manage essential
El
transformations.
mundo y América Latina
The world and
necesitan
Latin
y se
America
beneficiarían de un mundo
need
en
and would
paz,
benefit
de un
from a
sistema
world
multilateral
in peace,
fuerte,
from
de un sistema de
multilateral
comercio
system that is
regido por
strong,
reglas,
a
de
global
colaboración para
commercial
avanzar hacia el
system
desarrollo sostenible,
regulated by
para avanzar en
rules,
los ODS y para
focusing
enfrentar
on
el cambio
sustainable
climático.
development to
En
achieve
nuestro próximo
SDGs and make
40
progress
periodo
on
de sesiones
climate
de la
change.
CEPAL
In
en
the
octubre en
next
Perú, tendremos la primera oportunidad
session of
para
our
conversar
organization
sobre
in
la
Peru in
implementación de
October,
los
we will have an
compromisos
opportunity
de la
to
Cumbre del Futuro
discuss
en América Latina
the
y el Caribe.
implementation of the
Muchas gracias.
commitments of the Summit for the Future in Latin America and the
I
Caribbean.
thank
Thank
the
you.
distinguished representative of the Economic Commission for Latin America and the Caribbean, and give the floor to the
that is nearly broken. As President of the Interparliamentary Union, I am here to tell you that you can count on our organization, with a membership of 180 national parliaments, as a trusted partner in the journey ahead. No challenge is too big for those who are determined and willing to work together. IPU welcomes the strong acknowledgement of the role of parliaments at the United Nations provided in Action 55 of the Pact. This action line stresses the need to deepen the relationship between the United Nations and parliaments, and welcomes the contribution of parliaments through the IPU in supporting the implementation of United Nations agreements. We will have an opportunity to get into the fine details of this relationship during this 79th session of the General Assembly under the item Interaction between the United Nations, national parliaments, and the IPU. We look forward to working with member states to find more concrete ways to engage parliaments in the work of the United Nations so that they are more aware of the discussions taking place here and more capacitated to provide input through their governments as well as the IPU. In the quarter century since the Millennium Declaration, the relationship between the United Nations and parliaments has grown steadily, year after year, never losing sight of its final aim, which is to make the United Nations more open, more accountable, and more able to deliver on its commitment. We are committed to strengthening that relationship. Today, most major United Nations meetings take place with at least some parliamentary components. As it was once said by the founding father of Tanzania, Mwalimu Julius Kambarage Nyerere, it can be done. Play your part. We at the IPU are doing our part to make the United Nations and multilateralism stronger through parliaments. We all need to scale up and be ready to seize the opportunity for improvement whenever it arises. Mr. President, dear colleagues, people everywhere expect change. This is the time, this is the place to make that happen. I thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of the Interparliamentary Union and give the floor to the distinguished representative of the International Fund for Agricultural Development.
Excellencies, distinguished delegates, IFAD, the International Fund for Agricultural Development, welcomes and supports the outcome of the Summit of the Future. And today I want to reconfirm our commitment to ensure leaving no one behind. In just 7 decades from the creation of the United Nations to 2020, we witnessed a remarkable progress. The prevalence of hunger dropped from 2/3 of the world's population to less than 1 in 10. But for some years now, progress has stalled. Unless we take urgent and drastic action, as many as 600 million people will remain chronically undernourished by 2030. Let us recall the simple commitment at the heart of the 2030 Agenda. We will leave no one behind. This also includes the 3.4 billion people living in rural areas. Most rural people in the world depend on small farms for their livelihood. Half of our food comes from these small farms. Yet, hunger and poverty remains concentrated in the rural areas. Rural communities are the stewards of our land and of our water. In our fight against hunger, poverty, and climate change, they must also be part of our first line of action. Esteemed delegates, we must seize the momentum offered by the Summit of the Future to increase and scale up the investments in these rural areas where poverty is concentrated. And we need more than just the financing. We need investments that are targeted and that are effective. We need especially to reach the people and the countries that are most in need. Today, less than 1/3 of development finance for food systems reaches the least developed countries. Equally concerning, less than 1% of climate finance reaches the small farm holders who are at the forefront of our fight against climate change. Looking ahead to next year's International Conference on Financing for Development, we need targeted investments that respond to individual countries' realities and that drive long-term sustainable impact. This will require an increase in concessional resources, especially for the poorest and most indebted countries, as well as catalyzing private sector investments. IFAD is the only United Nations specialized agency, an international financial institution with the clear mandate to invest in rural people. And we stand ready to play our part. Thank you very much.
I thank the distinguished representative of the International Fund for Agricultural Development. And I now give the floor to the distinguished representative of l'Organisation Internationale de la Francophonie.
Mr. President, Excellencies, I have the honor to speak on behalf of Her Excellency Madame Louise Mushikiwabo, Secretary General of la Francophonie, and to convey her warmest congratulations on the holding of the Summit of the Future and the adoption of the Pact for the Future, the Global Digital Compact, and the Declaration on Future Generations. With its 88 member states and governments, the Organisation Internationale de la Francophonie has appreciated the inclusivity of this process. We have had the opportunity to present our organization's vision and contributions through our Secretary General, the group of Francophone ambassadors, and our experts. La Francophonie is constantly working for a reinvigorated multilateralism. To achieve this, it has urged the international community to re-establish the values to which our movement is so deeply attached: solidarity, equity, and full respect for diversity. That is the purpose of the advocacy that we have undertaken to ensure due consideration for cultural and linguistic diversity in the Global Digital Compact, which is the first instrument of global scope to enshrine the principles that will govern the digital space of tomorrow. That is also the thrust of our call for a reform of access to concessional financing for development that would take into account all dimensions of vulnerability, economic, social, and environmental. Driven by our duty of solidarity, we must now pursue our advocacy with international financial institutions. The next steps will be essential to make development opportunities both more equal and more sustainable. That is also the goal of the contribution that we have presented on the issues of peace and security in the context of the new agenda for peace. La Francophonie, in the area of peacekeeping, advocates for giving due consideration to multilingualism and intercultural skills, which are drivers of effectiveness in the implementation of the complex mandates of peacekeeping operations. Finally, La Francophonie welcomes the consensus that was reached on the need to honor, preserve, and promote cultural and linguistic diversity to benefit future generations. We are also pleased that the Pact for the Future provides for actions aimed at protecting and promoting culture as an integral component of sustainable development. On October 4th and 5th, La Francophonie will hold its 19th Summit of Heads of State and Government in France at Villers-Cotterêts and in Paris on the topic of creation, innovation, and entrepreneurship in French. It will focus on the common efforts that we must undertake in order to achieve a renewed multilateralism. Our vast Francophone community will ensure that the outcomes of this Summit of the Future bear fruit. By drawing from our common language, French, a lever for sincere listening and dialogue which we so need, we will continue to play our full role in the development of a culture of peace.
Merci. I thank the distinguished representative of l'Organisation Internationale de la Francophonie, and I give the floor to the distinguished representative of the Cooperation Council for the Arab States of the Gulf.
سيد الرئيس السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Mr. President,
أود في البداية تسليط
I
الضوء
convey
على
my
أهمية
greetings
قمة
and
المستقبل
would
التي
like to
نحضرها
begin
اليوم
by
والحاجة
highlighting the
الماسة
importance of
لمثل
the
هذه
summit of
القمة في هذا
the
التوقيت.
future, which brings us here
فنحن أمام
today, as well as the urgent
فرصة
need for such a
للتأكيد على
summit at
المبادئ
this time.
المشتركة
We
وتعزيز
are facing an
التعاون
opportunity
الدولي
to reaffirm common
للتصدي
principles and
للتحديات
strengthen international
الحالية
cooperation
من
to
خلال
address
أطر متعددة
current
الأطراف
challenges
أكثر فعالية وتأثيرا لتحقيق السلام،
through
لا سيما وأن
effective
التحديات التي يواجهها
multilateral
العالم
action
تؤثر على التنمية
for peace,
المستدامة
especially
عالميا.
given that
ومن هذا
global
المنطلق
challenges are
سأعرض عليكم
having an impact on
بإيجاز
sustainable
موقف
development
مجلس
at the global
التعاون لدول
level.
الخليج العربية من
With this in
ميثاق
mind,
المستقبل.
I would like to share
أولاً،
briefly the
تشير المؤشرات
GCC's
الدولية إلى
position
التباطؤ في تنفيذ
on
أهداف
the
التنمية
Pact for the
المستدامة،
Future.
حيث أن أكثر من 30%
International
منها
indicators
لم
point to
تتحقق
a slowdown in the
تقدما
implementation
يذكر.
of the
ومع ذلك
SDGs.
فإن دول مجلس
More
التعاون
than 30%
الخليجي
of
قد
them
وضعت
have not
التنمية
made
المستدامة في
progress.
مقدمة
The Gulf
أولوياتها،
Cooperation
لا
Council
سيما وأن الرؤى الوطنية
has
للدول الأعضاء
prioritized
وبرامج العمل
sustainable
الخليجي
development
المشترك
through
تعكس
the
التزام
national
دول
visions of
المجلس
its member
بتنفيذ
states,
خطة التنمية
which
المستدامة لعام
reflect
2030
a commitment
واتفاقية
towards
باريس وخطة
the
عمل أديس أبابا.
2030 Agenda
كما
Sustainable
تؤمن
for Development
دول
and
المجلس بأهمية دورها
the Paris
التنموي
Agreement and the
من
Addis
خلال
Ababa Action
الشراكات
Plan. The
الدولية
GCC
بدعم
member states
الاستدامة
are
والمساعدات
convinced of the
الإنمائية،
importance of
حيث يبرز
partnerships
دور
in the
المجلس في تقديم
context
المساعدات
of
الإنسانية لأكثر
development,
من 90 دولة حول
and the Council
العالم.
plays an important
كما
role
أنني
in more than
أشعر
90
بالفخر
countries across the
كمواطن
world.
خليجي ساهمت
I
دوله
am
الخليجية
proud as a
في
citizen
تنفيذ
of the
أهداف
Gulf
التنمية المستدامة
of the
للعديد من
role
دول العالم.
that Gulf
ثانياً،
states play
يعرض مجلس التعاون
in
عن
the
تأييده
implementation
لمبدأ
of
تعزيز السلام
SDGs in a
والأمن
number of
الدولي
countries across the
والوارد
world.
في ميثاق
The Council
المستقبل،
reaffirms the
ويؤكد
importance of the
دعمه
principles of
للمبادئ
strengthening
الشرعية الدولية
peace
الداعية
as
إلى حل الخلافات بالطرق
reflected
السلمية
in
واحترام
the
سيادة القانون
Pact for the Future
وسيادة الدول.
with a focus
ومن
on
هذا
international
المنطلق
law,
يشدد المجلس على ضرورة إيجاد حل عادل للقضية
resolving
الفلسطينية
disputes through
وفق
peaceful
قرارات
means,
الشرعية الدولية ومبادرة السلام
and
العربية.
seeking a
ثالثاً،
solution to the
تعزيز
issue of
النظام
Palestine
الدولي
that
للأجيال
is in
الحالية
line with
والمستقبلية هو أمر
the
بالغ
Arab Peace
الأهمية.
Initiative and
وكما قال
international law.
السيد
We must
أنطونيو
also
غوتيريش لا يمكننا
strengthen
بناء
the international
مستقبلنا
order to
بنظام
benefit
تم
future
بناؤه
generations.
لأجدادنا.
As
لذا
Antonio
يجب
Guterres has
تضافر
said, we
الجهود
cannot
لمواكبة
build
التطورات وضمان تلبية
our
احتياجات
future
الحاضر والمستقبل.
based on a
مجلس
system built for
التعاون
our
على
grandparents.
استعداد
We must therefore
للتعاون مع
pool
كافة
efforts in
الأطراف
order to
لتنفيذ
ensure
مخرجات القمة
that
المستقبل.
needs
في
of
ختام
future
هذه
generations are met
الكلمة
in all
أود
areas.
الإشارة إلى
The
تطابق
GCC
وجهات
stands
النظر ما بين
ready
مجلس
to
التعاون وميثاق
make its
المستقبل.
contribution to this
والسلام
effort.
عليكم ورحمة
I
الله
also
وبركاته.
reaffirm the vision that we share and which is in line with the Pact for the Future. Thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of the Cooperation Council for the Arab states of the Gulf, and I give the floor to the distinguished representative of the United Nations Population Fund.
Mr. President of the General Assembly, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, I greet you in peace, so desperately needed in our turbulent world. The United Nations Population Fund stands with you to forge a path to a better, more sustainable future of peace and prosperity for all. Demographic shifts, population growth, aging, migration are reshaping our world and our future. In an ever-changing world of 8 billion, our focus must be on people. This means ensuring that population dynamics are factored into development plans with an emphasis on rights, choices, dignity, and equality. It means investing in human capital, in health, education, and the empowerment of women and young people. We know this yields significant returns with ripple effect across generations. Our commitment to individual dignity, rights, and choices is the foundation for a resilient and sustainable future. Our 1.9 billion young people have the power to transform our world. Let's invest in their potential and support their leadership. They have a fundamental right to participate in sustainable development, humanitarian action, and sustaining peace. By leveraging science, data, statistics, combined with strategic foresight, we can ensure that we are thinking about the present and preparing for the future. Let's embrace and shape the technology that is transforming our world and our work. As we work to bridge the digital divide, our task is to ensure technology fosters empowerment and gender equality rather than perpetuating violence. Excellencies, 3 decades on from the groundbreaking International Conference on Population and Development in Cairo, and as the end of our ICPD 30 review process draws near, UNFPA remains laser-focused on sustainable human development. This requires rallying new allies, new partners, harnessing innovation, exploring new forms of financing, and embracing the power of technology to advance rights and choices for her and for everyone in line with the objective of this summit. We congratulate member states for their consensus on the Pact of the Future, the Declaration on Future Generation, and the Global Digital Compact. These important outcomes offer some solution, yet we know much more remains to be done to translate commitment into action. By focusing our effort and strengthening our partnership and investment, we can overcome our common challenges and build a more inclusive, equitable, and sustainable future for all. I thank you for your kind attention.
I thank the distinguished representative of the United Nations Population Fund and give the floor to the distinguished representative of the Digital Cooperation Organization.
Mr. President, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to express my gratitude to Secretary General His Excellency Antonio Guterres and the co-facilitators for their efforts in bringing us to this pivotal moment. It is a privilege to address this assembly following the historic adoption of the Pact for the Future and also the Global Digital Compact. The GDC lays out a roadmap for an inclusive, sustainable, and a secure digital future for all. However, the real challenge lies in translating these ambitious goals into actions as we strive to achieve the SDGs. The digital divide is multifaceted, impacting the AI divide, computing divide, gender digital divide, and skills divide. The AI and computing divide create barriers as some nations rapidly innovate while others struggle to keep up. The gender digital divide limits women access to technology, and the skills divide leaves many without essential digital competencies. If we do not address these interconnected challenges, we risk leaving entire communities behind. Today, I represent the Digital Cooperation Organization, an organization dedicated to accelerating the inclusive growth of the digital economy. Our 16 member states across Asia, Europe, Africa, and the Middle East represent over 800 million people, 10% of the global population, with 75% under the age of 30. We're committed to empowering our member states to transition from consumers to producers and innovators in the digital age. As a connector and facilitator and advisor, we ensure that everyone is equipped with the tools to succeed in the digital age. It is here at the Summit of the Future that we launched the Digital Economy Navigator, an innovative tool providing insights on digital economy performance across 50 countries. This initiative is just one of the ways where we are turning the GDC in principles into action. But while then is a vital resource, it is only the beginning. We just started. We must foster collective efforts to the GDC's ambitious goals, objectives, and commitments. I call upon every country, every individual, every organization to foster this digital navigator and to join forces in this critical endeavor. Let us create a future where everyone, everywhere can thrive.
I thank the distinguished representative of the Digital Cooperation Organization and give the floor to the distinguished representative of the Organization of Ibero-American States for Education, Science, and Culture.
Señor Presidente,
Mr. President,
señor Secretario General, Excelencias.
Secretary General, Your Excellencies,
La Organización de Estados Iberoamericanos para la Educación, la Ciencia y la Cultura, la OI, desea mostrar su agradecimiento por la oportunidad de participar en la Cumbre del Futuro como nuevo organismo observador ante la Asamblea General de Naciones Unidas. Nos sentimos muy honrados de poder aportar nuestra visión sobre la situación y retos en educación, ciencia y cultura de Iberoamérica, en un momento caracterizado por la crisis de confianza y desunión. Visión y acción construida durante 75 años, porque somos la organización decana del sistema iberoamericano y la que más presencia y más actividad tiene en la región. Iberoamérica ya no es lo que era. Después de la crisis del 2018 y la pandemia. Una crisis que nos compromete a una transformación profunda y digital. Los avances en el cumplimiento de los ODS alcanzan el cumplimiento del 22%, frente al 15% de la media mundial, porque, en último extremo, las urgencias locales postergan los cumplimientos estratégicos que anhela nuestra región. Las políticas públicas en materia de educación, de ciencia y cultura deben ser más relevantes, más eficaces, más eficientes y urgentes. Ese es nuestro compromiso, es el compromiso de la OI, para hacer posible las políticas públicas, para hacer que las políticas públicas lleguen a la ciudadanía. Iberoamérica ha alcanzado importantes objetivos cuantitativos, como son, por ejemplo, la cobertura casi universal en educación, en primaria y secundaria, el crecimiento importante en la educación superior, pero la calidad de la educación y otros servicios públicos es baja, así como la inclusión y la equidad. Hay que movilizar recursos, ciertamente, financieros, y a título de ejemplo podemos considerar que comparativamente los países miembros de la OCDE invierten 3 veces más que los de la región en educación y, por ejemplo, en cultura todavía no superamos el 1% del PIB de nuestros países. Pero no solamente hay que invertir más, sino ser más eficaces y más eficientes. Por ello, debemos aprovechar una oportunidad única que la ofrece los beneficios de la cuarta revolución para avanzar más y más rápido. El esfuerzo debe ser múltiple, tanto en educación infantil básica, formación profesional, educación superior, en la defensa de derechos humanos y de la democracia, así como en ciencia y cultura. El futuro convoca por igual a todas las áreas sociales. Por ello, desde la OI prestaremos especial atención a la transformación digital y a la inteligencia artificial, en español y en portugués. En breve, propondremos al gobierno de la región un programa estratégico
I thank the distinguished representative of the Organization of Ibero-American States for Education, Science, and Culture, and give the floor to the distinguished representative of the International Union for Conservation of Nature.
Excelencias,
Your
el mundo
Excellencies,
está cambiando.
the world is
Hay
changing.
una necesidad urgente
There is
de
an
responder a las
urgent
crisis
need to
mundiales
respond to
de
global
pérdida de
crises,
biodiversidad
the
y el
loss of
cambio
biodiversity
climático,
and
que
climate
nos llevan a la
change
pobreza y a
that
la
lead us to
inseguridad.
poverty and
La
insecurity.
ciencia nos ha demostrado que estamos
Science has
traspasando
demonstrated that we're
rápidamente
rapidly
los límites
exceeding
planetarios
planetary
que
limits
proporcionan las
that
condiciones
allow
de vida
for
adecuadas para la
conditions of
especie
life
humana.
that are sufficient
El
for
aumento del
the human
consumo de los
species, the increase
recursos, la
in the consumption
persistente
of
desigualdad
resources,
y la
persistent
aceleración del
inequalities, and
cambio
the
climático
acceleration of climate
están
change
sometiendo al
are
planeta a una
subjecting the
presión sin
planet to an
precedentes.
unprecedented
Los
pressure.
humanos ya hemos extinguido
Humans
la
have
vida de
already
muchas
extinguished the
especies
life of
y
many
hemos llevado
species,
al
and
borde
we
de la
have
extinción
led
a una
to the
cuarta
verge of
parte de las
extinction
especies restantes.
1/4 of the remaining
Si queremos
species.
asegurar el
If we
futuro de
want
nuestro
to
planeta,
ensure the future of our
tenemos que
planet,
provocar
we
un cambio
must
transformador para la naturaleza
trigger a
y las
transformative change
personas.
for nature and
Después de
for
todo,
people.
esta emergencia se trata
This-
de la sobrevivencia de la
We're
especie especie humana y de nuestra casa, el planeta Tierra. Un rayo de esperanza proviene de los recientes éxitos en los acuerdos multilaterales de acción por la naturaleza y el clima. El Marco Mundial de Biodiversidad de Montreal y el Tratado de Alta Mar son logros significativos que demuestran que la comunidad internacional y el sistema multilateral funcionan y pueden lograr el cambio radical que necesitamos. Lo esencial ahora es la aplicación de estos y otros acuerdos clave. Tenemos que situar a la naturaleza en el centro de los sistemas sociales y económicos mundiales, cambiar la relación entre las personas y la naturaleza, de modo que la naturaleza ofrezca soluciones a las personas y las personas disfruten de los beneficios que nos da la naturaleza de forma equitativa y eficaz. Tenemos que transicionar hacia una economía circular mundial que tenga en cuenta el verdadero costo de los servicios ecosistémicos necesarios para la producción de bienes y servicios. Debemos aplicar políticas encaminadas a lograr un futuro libre de combustibles fósiles y positivo para la naturaleza. Esto debe sustentarse en procesos de toma de decisiones inclusivos y participativos que incluyan de manera significativa a los jóvenes, los pueblos indígenas y las comunidades locales con consideraciones de género y que estén respaldados por datos y herramientas científicas. La UICN, Unión Internacional para la Conservación de la Naturaleza, da la bienvenida al Pacto para el Futuro como un compromiso renovado con el multilateralismo por parte de los Estados miembros. Aunque lamentamos el hecho de que el pacto no haya logrado plenamente el cambio transformador necesario para la naturaleza y para el clima. La UICN está comprometida a apoyar la implementación del pacto y más allá de este pacto,
The microphone is switched off.
I thank the distinguished representative of the International Union for Conservation of Nature and give the floor to the distinguished representative of the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestinian Refugees in the Near East.
Mr. Chair, Excellencies, we have gathered here to shape our collective future. We do so amid seismic geopolitical shifts that are fiercely testing the international institutions and instruments we have relied on for 3/4 of a century. We have an opportunity to reaffirm the values and principles that have served us well and to pursue meaningful reform where needed. The United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine Refugees, UNRWA, confronts daily the challenges this summit seeks to address. For 75 years, UNRWA has provided human development services for generations of Palestinian refugees in the occupied Palestinian territories, Lebanon, Syria, and Jordan. Millions of children have been educated in our schools, which equip them with the values, knowledge, and skill they need to thrive. Our education program has reached gender parity and teaches value of human rights and tolerance. UNRWA's education outcomes are among the best in the region and at the lowest cost per student. Our health program provides primary health care to millions, achieving universal vaccination in Palestinian refugees communities. Today, however, our decades-long investment in the future of Palestinian refugees is at risk. Excellencies, the blatant disregard for international humanitarian law in Gaza should alarm us all. The scale of human suffering is immense and our ability to respond is severely constrained. 222 UNRWA staff have been killed. 2/3 of our buildings have been damaged and destroyed, killing hundreds of people seeking United Nations protection. Legislative efforts are on the way to evict UNRWA from East Jerusalem, remove its privileges and immunities, and designate it as a terrorist organization. Failing to push back against violation of international law and failing to push back against efforts to intimidate and undermine the United Nations
sets a dangerous precedent. It will compromise the future of humanitarian work and erode the rule of law. Excellencies, the international response to the war in Gaza, escalating violence in the West Bank, and the spillover of conflict into Lebanon and across the region is highly concerning. International law is implemented selectively or not at all, reinforcing perception of inequality and injustice. Dehumanization is rampant in public discourse.
I thank the distinguished representative of UNRWA and give the floor to the distinguished representative of the United Nations University.
Excellencies, distinguished delegates, we find ourselves at a critical moment in history. An intensifying climate crisis, growing inequality, endemic violence, and the emergence of new technologies are entrenching old divisions and creating new fault lines that threaten the cohesion of our societies. The Summit of the Future is an opportunity to collectively address these challenges and deliver on the vision we established here almost 10 years ago with the launch of the Sustainable Development Goals. The summit and the Pact for the Future is a defining moment for current and future generations. Decades from now, I hope that our children will look back and acknowledge the summit as a momentous occasion, and that they will agree that we have been good ancestors who laid the foundations of a more just, sustainable, and peaceful world. The Secretary General has argued that we can't build a future for our grandchildren with a system that was built for our grandparents. Our future will be defined by the collective commitments we make today to transition away from fossil fuels, strengthen the governance of new technologies, build peace, and reform the international financial architecture. Science and research will be a critical facilitator of this shift, informing the development of policies and solutions and ensuring they will have real impact. The United Nations University, through its collaborative research and education, is a source of impartial knowledge, evidence, and policy solutions. We have been committed to the development of the Pact for the Future, and we are committed to its successful implementation. We offer you a bridge to the scientific community. We offer you a neutral space to test ideas and build new coalitions around bold policy solutions. We offer you our expertise and our networks in service of a reinvigorated multilateralism. Today, as we seek a new consensus to accelerate the attainment of the Sustainable Development Goals and secure a prosperous, resilient, and peaceful planet for current and future generations, it is imperative that we acknowledge and make strategic use of science and scientific institutions. I thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of United Nations University and give the floor to the distinguished representative of the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty Organization.
Chairperson, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, the future is a big place. Where will we live in it? The good areas or the bad areas? That's up to us. But one thing for sure is that if there is a return to nuclear weapon testing, our shared future will not be bright. There were 900 nuclear weapon tests between Hiroshima in 1945 and the signing of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty in 1968. But even then, the nuclear tests kept going, an average of 1 a week for over 25 years. In the future, what if we return back to a renewed nuclear armed race? Or there's a catastrophic miscalculation, or we're just unlucky. A pact for the future is a shared vision for a better present and a safer future. In the safer future, the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty is vital. The CTBT is smart. Our international monitoring system network of sensors is a scientific wonder, so sensitive. The CTBT is transparent. States know that we'll detect any test and fast. We'll know where it has happened. And the CTBT has worked. Under the CTBT, there's been only a handful of nuclear tests this century. Remarkably, all this when the treaty has not yet entered into force. These are worrying times, even dangerous times, with reports of enhanced activities at former nuclear test sites, of threats of the use of nuclear weapons, or we're creating a bright future. We cannot do that if we're heading into nuclear war. A big step towards achieving this is ending nuclear testing once and for all. The future is a big place with big issues to consider. That's what this summit has been all about. Climate, migration, preserving the environment, the future of multilateralism. Major change usually requires major investment, but stopping nuclear tests costs so little. All it takes is our collective will and then the action of a few. There is no exaggeration, the CTBT is a great shared achievement. If this summit moves all the nations of the world towards making
I thank the distinguished representative of the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty Organization, and I give the floor to the distinguished representative of the International Trade Center.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, we're here today because we're facing some sobering realities, some tough odds. When the Sustainable Development Goals were adopted, it was a moment hailed globally as the dawn of a new era for international cooperation, one that would finally lead to a better, fairer world. But as we've learned in the years since, achieving transformation on this scale is no mean feat. And it becomes even harder when crises seem to darken every horizon. Now, too often, it is easy to fall prey to pessimism, to see the world before us with so much human suffering and loss of life, with an ever-warming climate and mounting conflicts, and fear that things may never get better. But when I think of the small business leaders and the member states that we serve at the International Trade Center, it's clear that we don't have to look very far to see what a new world could and should look like. These small business leaders don't have the luxury of saying that it's too hard, and they already live and breathe the values that the SDGs were designed to uphold. These small business leaders are women who are running firms that tackle challenges ranging from food security to healthcare. They're refugees who are finding new ways to support their families through digital tools while sharing their expertise with the world. They are young people who are teaching us how to safeguard our natural environment while creating new jobs along the way. They've inspired me to come before you today and make this request, that when we leave Turtle Bay and begin putting this pact for the future into motion, that we ensure that the world's small businesses are front and center in every decision that we take. We cannot afford to do anything less. On behalf of the International Trade Center, we welcome the Pact for the Future, the Global Digital Compact, and the Declaration on Future Generations. We're already acting on many of the commitments laid out in these documents, from supporting more small businesses to take full part in the digital economy, to championing youth entrepreneurship, to supporting the vision of UN 2.0. It's why we've brought young innovators to New York this week to celebrate their solutions for saving our planet at the Youth Entrepreneur Awards. It's why we're showcasing some of the work underway under ITC's Digital Moonshot, our big strategic push to ensure all small businesses can take full part in the digital economy. And it's why I can promise you this, that we at ITC will never shy away from doing the hard work of making sure this Pact for the Future delivers for those who need it most. Thank you very much.
I thank the distinguished representative of the International Trade Center, and I give the floor to the distinguished representative of the United Nations Entity for Gender Equality and the Empowerment of Women.
Excellencies, good evening. As you convene here for the Summit of the Future, we join you in applauding the world's commitment to reinvigorated and more networked multilateralism. We see a commitment to advancing gender equality and the rights of women and girls across the Pact for the Future and its annexes. And yet, the summit comes at a time when the crisis of women's rights preoccupies us, when we are all seized of the need to accelerate progress towards the 2030 agenda, and when the evidence has never been more clear or compelling for SDG 5 as the accelerant to the entire 2030 agenda. Our latest data unpacks concerning ways in which we remain off track. Without change, without acceleration, it will take 137 years to eradicate extreme poverty for women and girls, 68 years to eradicate child marriage, 39 years for gender parity in parliaments. Excellencies, next year, we will commemorate the 30th anniversary of the Beijing Conference and its platform for action. It remains the most widely endorsed and visionary agenda for women's rights in history. The best way to commemorate this and to deliver promises of the Pact for the Future is to implement real change in the lives of women and girls, and critically to deliver on peace. Time to silence the guns everywhere. That is why UN Women is putting forward a plan for Beijing Plus 30 that is closely aligned to the ambition of the Pact for the Future. First, we will work with member states and other stakeholders to advance high-impact, high-return on investment priority actions at country level that will accelerate Agenda 2030. Second, we will work to ensure more resources for the crucial role of civil society across all gender equality issues. Finally, we are echoing your call for a stronger multilateral system as a force for real change in the lives of all women and girls. We must and can make the choice to collectively leverage this moment and galvanize the will, commitment, and resources needed to get back on track. UN Women looks forward to joining you all in this endeavor. Thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of UN Women and give the floor to the distinguished representative of the United Nations Children Fund.
Excellencies, I have 4 messages to convey. First, at this summit, I know we feel a sense of tremendous accomplishment, but its success will depend on the practical implementation of what we have decided and how these decisions are applied to domestic policies, budgets, and programs to secure a better future. Second, Together, we have accomplished extraordinary achievements over the last few decades for our youngest citizens, our children. We know that millions of children today are surviving and thriving, having had improved access to health, nutrition, education, protection, and participation. But we also know that millions of children across the globe are facing a confluence of intractable crises, from armed conflicts through climate change to persistent poverty and inequality. Third, we must accept that children will influence and shape the future, and it is imperative that children's rights, including their right to be heard in matters that affect them, is placed at the center of our collective development efforts. 35 years ago, we also made this commitment to our future when we adopted the Convention on the Rights of the Child, the most ratified international human rights treaty in history. We further cemented this promise in MDGs and then the SDGs. But sadly, we are off track to meet the SDGs, particularly those related to child rights. Finally, there is hope that comes with opportunity of accelerating to meet the SDGs and setting the present and future generations on a trajectory for success. This is a choice we have the power to make. Government and public financing are key to accelerating social investments in children. Just this morning at UNICEF House, we shared a comprehensive set of proven solutions to unlock benefits for child well-being across sectors. We can and must take these proven solutions to scale and achieve the much-needed impact for children that we have committed ourselves to across the 19 child-related SDG indicators. Our efforts have very real consequences for children around the world and our future. As you return home to you and your daily lives, please take with you the conviction that we can and we must work together so that every child everywhere today and tomorrow will survive, thrive.
I thank the distinguished representative of the United Nations Children Fund, and now give the floor to the distinguished representative of the Economic Cooperation Organization.
Mr. President, the Global Pact that we forged 80 years ago through the adoption of the UN Charter and its principles gave almost uninterrupted peace and prosperity to our successive generations for decades. That compact is clearly under stress today. Luckily, this summit gave us a unique opportunity to reflect on the past and chart a new course for a better future. The choices are clear. We can either have a breakthrough or a breakdown. By successfully negotiating and adopting the Pact for the Future, we have not only highlighted the significant challenges facing humanity, but also made commitments to effectively deal with these challenges. Through this summit, we are also reaffirming the UN Charter, committing to reinvigorating multilateralism, boosting implementation of our commitments, and restoring trust among member states. We are happy to see that the summit has also prioritized technology through the Digital Compact. In an era where our ability to reach common ground to tackle pressing challenges is getting constrained, cooperative regionalism is the way forward as a building block for an inclusive and more effective multilateralism. UN is and must remain at the center of all our efforts in pursuing stronger cooperation and reinvigorated multilateralism. However, the work should start at the regional level to build a strong foundation for lasting international peace and security. Therefore, strengthening regionalism would serve the purpose of enhanced multilateralism, where our hopes and aspirations for better tomorrow are rekindled. Aligned with the Agenda for Sustainable Development 2030, we at ECO crafted the Vision 2025, which aims to boost trade, enhance connectivity, secure transition towards green energy, and promote sustainable economic growth and the welfare of our people. The ECO is also in the process of finalizing its post-2025 strategy, where we would incorporate the outcomes of this summit. The ECO is committed to enhancing regional collaboration and positioning itself as an active player on the global stage. We firmly believe that better connected and more integrated regions capable of working together to address their peace, security, and development-related challenges only make the reinvigorated multilateralism easier to achieve. It is therefore time to prioritize regionalism. We cannot build a solid foundation for multilateralism without strengthening.
I thank the distinguished representative of the Economic Cooperation Organization, and I give the floor to the distinguished representative of the Universal Postal Union.
Excellencies, on behalf of the United Nations Interagency Group on Aging, I am honored as a representative of the Universal Postal Union, a member of the group, to deliver this statement. The postal sector, represented by the Universal Postal Union as a specialized agency of the United Nations, plays a vital role in the development of universal postal services that meet the needs of all citizens. With its extensive network of 700,000 post offices and a growing digital and social infrastructure, the postal system reaches even the most remote communities, providing essential services to billions of people worldwide. As we convene at this summit, often referred to as a once-in-a-generation opportunity to shape our collective future, it is imperative that we adopt a people-centered, right-based, life course approach, one that fully includes all generations, including older persons. Demographic changes are not a distant challenge. They are already transforming our world and will define the future. Population aging is a global phenomenon that is accelerating. This demographic shift, where people are living longer and increasingly healthier lives, is a human success story, not a crisis. It is a testament to advances in health, living conditions, and technology. However, whether this transformation unfolds as an opportunity or a challenge depends on the policy choices we make today. The dominant narrative often frames population aging and increased longevity as inevitable burdens on national economies, health, and social care. This perspective is both limiting and inaccurate. The outcomes will depend on how we craft our policies and whether we seize the opportunity to invest in inclusive, age-responsive systems that benefit everyone. In reviewing the Pact of the Future, the group recognizes its bold and ambitious vision for a sustainable and equitable future. Nevertheless, we are disheartened to see only one mention of older persons compared to 30 references to youth. This stark imbalance ignores both the needs and contributions of today's older populations and the fact that today's youth are tomorrow's older generations. Furthermore, we note with concern that the Global Digital Compact, while rightly recognizing groups experiencing vulnerabilities, fails to specially mention older persons. This omission is particularly troubling given that older persons are among the group most affected by the digital divide. They must not be left behind. Members of the United Nations Interagency Group on Aging stand ready to support member states in this endeavor, and we look forward to continuing our work in partnerships with all stakeholders. I thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of the Universal Postal Union. Colleagues, that was the last speaker on the list for the Summit of the Future. I understand you're all very relieved, want to go home, which I have full sympathy for. It's been a long day, But nevertheless, there is still one really important segment coming up, and that is the closing segment for the summit. And we will therefore suspend the meeting now until 8 o'clock. It's just 10 minutes or so. So please bear with us. And then the PGA will return for the closing segment of the Summit of the Future. This meeting is now suspended until the closing summit is held at 8 p.m. The meeting is suspended.